100 years ago, and even earlier, after the Aliyot began, so let's say in the last 20 years of the 19th century, neither the Jews nor the local Arabs had the, call it, muscle, the strength, the power, the military power to gain leverage over each other. And so resorting to the law was a way for both sides to gain leverage, to influence initially the authorities in Constantinople and later the British authorities, and to influence international opinion in the conflict, to try to gain the upper hand. One of the most, and the British too relied on the law, relied on legal frameworks, as they did in Ireland, as they did in India, to try to create some modicum of legal authority to justify their actions, especially in the case, I believe, of the Palestine Mandate, because Britain had a boss when it came to the Palestine Mandate. The League of Nations, the Council of the League of Nations, empowered the Permanent Mandates Commission, or Permanent Mandates Committee, to oversee all of the mandatories in the exercise of their mandatory responsibilities, to make sure that they were doing what they were supposed to. And of course, the Palestine Mandate became the most controversial of all of the post-World War I mandates. But what is so fascinating about the Permanent Mandates Commission and the League of Nations, 90 years ago, during the 1920s especially, somewhat in the 1930s also, as compared to the United Nations today, the League of Nations was very sympathetic to Zionism. And there were people on the Permanent Mandates Commission, Commissioner Rapport, Commissioner Van Rees, Commissioner Tanaka from Japan, who were highly critical of British legal decision-making in Palestine, constantly accusing Britain in hearings before the Permanent Mandates Commission, constantly accusing Britain of failing to abide by the terms of the mandate. A couple of examples. Article 6 required Britain to facilitate Jewish immigration to Palestine and close settlement on the land. And the British government initially, in the Churchill White Paper of 1922, said, well, facilitating immigration, that doesn't mean unlimited Jewish immigration to Palestine. That will be too provocative. The Arabs, of course, were deeply concerned about the Jews becoming a majority in Palestine and then trying to claim a statehood for the entire territory. And so the British came up with an interpretation of Article 6 that said Jewish immigration will be allowed only so long as Palestine has the economic capacity to absorb new immigrants, economic absorptive capacity. And that became the British interpretation. The League accepted that, but constantly criticized Britain for using it as a basis to restrict Jewish immigration throughout the mandate years. Land acquisition was another issue. So yes, compared to today, Israeli side has vast military superiority as compared to the occupied Palestinian Arabs, and the Israelis are much less inclined to agree to legal proceedings, especially when you have an international court of justice and an international criminal court that, let's be objective, are not the most neutral decision makers out there. And so, maybe we could have a Korean, Japanese, Martian entity as the forum for bringing these disputes, but right now there's little incentive on the Israeli side, especially after what's been happening at the ICC, in particular at the International Criminal Court. Little incentive, I think, on the Israeli side to say, okay, we're willing to accede to a legal process, because I don't think that there's confidence that the judges would be fair and impartial.
The president of the ICC is